Okay, well, let's get started. Again, welcome. I'm Dan Toll, and I'm the president of the Captive Insurance Companies Association, or what we like to call CICA. We're pleased to have some students, some professors. I think we have some other interested parties on the webinar with us today. We also realize that many of you will view this webinar at a later date, which is absolutely fine to do as well. We know that as students, you sometimes have classes when we do these, so we get it. Today, we're going to give you an overview of the essay contest, tell you a little bit about CICA, and then with our essay contest sponsor, Highland Global Captive Solutions, they're going to give you an overview of captive insurance and the 3 case studies. You'll also get a chance to meet the 3 mentors with Highland, one of which happens to be a prior essay contest finalist. I'll let that person let you know later on that. We'll also certainly have an opportunity for questions at the end of this, but by all means, if you have questions when you're viewing this later or at any time, feel free to reach out to all of us. We also hope that through this contest, we may pique your interest in the exciting and interesting and rewarding careers of captive insurance. We know some of you may have never even heard of captive insurance when you first were notified about this potential contest that you could enter in. What I wanted to let you know is that this little, what's often known as a small niche part of the captive or of the insurance industry is very fast growing, and it's gotten quite large. In fact, according to Ernst & Young, which is EY, as many of you know them, is in their 2024 Global Insurance Outlook report, captives now represent nearly 25% of the overall global commercial insurance market. So we're not such a small industry after all, and we're growing very fast. And again, we'd love to have you get more interested in it. So we look forward to your submissions and certainly your questions and your interest. So let me start out by talking just a little bit about our association for the many individuals on this call that who likely do not know anything about CICA. CICA brings together risk management professionals and captive insurance professionals from across the US and around the world. We do that under what we call our domicile neutral umbrella, which means we're not affiliated with a specific domicile or jurisdiction. We bring folks together to talk about strategies and best practices, and we're very fortunate being domicile neutral that we get to draw upon the best of the best from all the different captive associations and domiciles. We were founded more than 50 years ago for the benefit of the captive owner, and much of those founding principles still hold true today. Besides our annual conference, CICA is known for our best practice, our unbiased education, our strong advocacy, and our excellent networking and professional development. CICA recognizes that our industry needs to help promote, nurture, and develop careers in captive insurance. And one of the things we did 7 years ago was to introduce top college students interested in risk management to captive insurance by launching our student essay contest. And again, we're excited that you're interested on the call today. CICA, as well as Highland, has made a huge commitment to students in helping to expose them to career opportunities in captive insurance. And I'm pleased that for now our 3rd year, we've been able to partner with Highland on this initiative. The captive insurance industry is a fast-growing industry, as I mentioned, and provides rewarding and interesting careers that can take you a lot of different places. If you want to hit the next slide there. Besides there being 40 different US states that have captive insurance legislation, we get to go to a lot of fun places in the captive world because some of the leading domiciles are places like the top left happens to be the Cayman Islands. They have a conference here coming up the week after Thanksgiving. The top right is Bermuda. The bottom left is Luxembourg. And the bottom right is Hawaii. So this is a very portable industry. A lot of these are all leading domiciles where you could potentially travel and have business. And again, I encourage you to look into more of what captive insurance can mean for you. So let's dig into the contest a little bit more. What you do is you select one of 3 case studies. You may have already dabbled into that a little bit. You're going to hear more about that from our mentors. And with that, we want you to analyze and design a captive insurance structure to address the prime insurance risk and explain the rationale behind those conclusions. We also want you to share what some of the, what are the developments that happen within an organization when they develop a captive, because there's a lot of other ancillary benefits that happen when organizations decide to retain some of their own risk. Next slide, please. And excuse me. So let's get to the fun part. We have cash prizes thanks to Highland. So and these are checks that are made out to you and your partner in this contest. These aren't checks made to your parents or to the college or university. So this could help you with some spring break money or help you with your college education, whatever you see fit. Top prize is $2,500. Second prize is $1,500, and third prize is $1,000. You also get to attend CICA's annual conference, which is March 9th through 11th, in Tucson, sunny Tucson, Arizona, at the JW Star Pass. You get to present at our conference, which is another great thing for your career. And we also, your essays are published with our media sponsor, which is Captive Insurance Times. They also do exclusive coverage of the finalists. So again, it's a great opportunity to get some recognition and to be published as a college student. We also post them on our website as well. So next slide. These are the deadlines. So today we have the webinar. Again, this is very helpful for those that are on the call, or if you're listening to this later. Another very important date here is this October 16th deadline. This is where we want. You don't have to be 100% committed to doing, but we'd love to have you submit what we call our intent to submit form. And what that does is gives us an opportunity to better communicate with you in case timeframes change or we decide to send out more resources or do different things. It also helps us when we prepare for the scoring of all these, that we have a better sense of whether we're getting 20 submissions or 10 and what have you, and we can staff up accordingly for that. November 15th is the session submission deadline. Again, you submit through the website and all of that. And again, we're excited for those submissions to come in. By January 10th, you will be notified if you are a finalist, and the finalist teams have a chance at that point to work more closely with the Highland mentors to basically fine tune and resubmit their essays, because we take the 3 finalists, let you work with your mentors for a little bit, and then we rescore them again. And again, when we say we, this is the CICA board of directors are the scoring committee for this. And then that's a very closely guarded secret. And if you're a finalist, I'll get to meet you in person in Tucson. And when you're up on the stage during our general session in front of hundreds of our members, that's when you'll find out who wins first, second, and third place. So it's an exciting time. And finally, usually about a month after the conference in April is when Captive Insurance Times publishes your essays. So next slide. The full rules for all this are on the website, but certainly eligibility, you have to be an undergraduate student. Occasionally we'll get graduate students that'll want to submit. You can be an international undergraduate student. That's not a problem. We have had 2 interns that were attending different colleges do a team. That's fine as well. But you work in teams of 2 and together write 1 essay submission, 10 pages in length. They can't be previously published. And again, they're judged by us on the CICA board of directors. Next slide. Yeah. And at this point, I again want to thank Highland Global Captive Solutions for being our sponsor, as well as providing 3 great mentors to help guide you through some of this process. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Anne-Marie Toll, who's the CEO of Highland Global Risk and Captive Solutions, to introduce her team and to say a few words. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, CICA, and welcome to the students here and instructors that are participating today. We appreciate your time and effort, and we are a very proud sponsor, as Dan mentioned, of this student essay contest. I've been in the industry a long time and am very passionate about transferring knowledge, training, mentoring professionals in this industry. I've made a long career in this captive insurance industry, and I think it's important departing some of this knowledge and expertise with a lot of others. And today we have identified for you 3 of our superstars on our team that I'm very proud to have introduce you to all of them, and they're going to be really critical for each and every one of you because they have the capacity and the ability to help guide you, provide resources, and they'll get into some of this today. We're going to spend a little time talking about some of the captive basics, but also talking about those few case studies. And I would encourage you to please reach out to them, reach out to me. You have my contact information. We love to be able to give you some experiences, share some insight, and also guide you to, optimal resources that are available to you. So I want to turn it over and introduce our team here of superstars. The first one being Danielle.
Hi, everyone. My name is Danielle Brown. I'm located in Vermont. I have about 6 years captive experience, 5 of which in management and a little bit of regulatory, and just started consulting. I think the captive industry is great. If you're a finalist, you'll see that it's a very tight-knit industry and everyone's very close with each other.
Excellent. Thank you, Danielle. And she brings a well-rounded background, which I think will be beneficial for all of you. So be sure to tap into Danielle. Caroline.
Hi, I'm Caroline Erdman. I sit in Highland Chicago office. I'm a captive consultant. I've been here for about a year and a half. I started right after graduation. I graduated with risk management and finance. And I absolutely love the captive industry. It's really innovative. It's honestly a lot of fun. Just learning about all the different risks and all the new and upcoming. And I look forward to being your.
Excellent. Caroline, likewise, has some great experience. In her internship, she was able to work in a domicile regulatory state and bring some great experience from that time into this current role. And last but not least, I'll turn it over to Carter to introduce himself. He's got, as I think Dan alluded to, some great background with being a former essay contest finalist.
Hi, everyone. I am a CICA alum, if you will. I'm Carter Cappan, a consultant alongside Caroline and Danielle. Been in the industry for 10 months now, post-graduation in December. That being said, I did intern for 2 years with Highland as a captive consultant, so I have that experience as well. And really, the essay contest is a fantastic experience. Because the captive industry is such a tight niche, and having that knowledge is huge as you expand into the industry. And then the networking as well. If you do become a finalist, you do get to attend CICA, as Dan alluded to. And really, it's a great space to meet a bunch of industry leaders in the captive space. And so I look forward to working with some of you and hopefully meeting all of you of the finalists in Arizona.
Excellent. Well, again, welcome and thank you. I thank my team here, and they'll do a fantastic job of being able to leverage and provide resources for you. We're going to move on to a couple of the captive basics that'll help set the platform and give you just some high-level overview for some items. We do have additional resources if need be, but certainly feel free to ask questions, I think, in the chat box if you do have some. As we proceed through the material, I'm going to open up with a couple of slides and different information to give you an overview of some of the basics. And then the rest of the team here will impart some of their knowledge related to different types of captives and a variety of different areas we want to touch on to give you a little bit of that platform to start building on your background, because many of you might not have even heard that much about captive insurance, and we want to help guide you as you look at the case studies and have questions. The first question that you always ask when you're going down this path of a captive, what is a captive? What do I do with a captive is, the age-old question of your total cost of risk, or you probably have learned the term T-Corp related to the total cost of risk for an organization, whether you're for-profit or not-for-profit. and determining as an organization, as we have exposures here, whether you have people, assets, or clients or customers, you have exposure. And what do those exposures and what do those risks mean? And do you have the financial wherewithal in the balance sheet to retain some of that risk yourself? And many organizations do that today by the means of a deductible and retaining that risk, or even self-insurance and taking on some of that risk. And then at what point do you transfer the risk? And, we'll get into machinations of that. And there's a rabbit hole you can certainly go down that we don't want to today. But to get you start thinking about retaining risk and, what a captive is, it's a risk financing tool in simplistic terms. And moving to the next slide and thinking about how do we break down and think about a captive? It is that risk financing tool. It's a licensed, regulated form of self-insurance. What that self-insurance layer is really dependent on the owners of that captive. And we'll talk about owners, we'll talk about, a few different areas here today. But thinking about it, if I'm a manufacturing company and I want to take on some of the risk related to my employees, my workers' compensation, how do I finance that? I can finance it on my own operating balance sheet, or I can finance it in a separate licensed regulated vehicle called a captive. And there are many benefits of doing that. And it doesn't all have to be a single parent. There are groups and there are different types of structures that are available, but it really is ultimately to the benefit of those that own it and those that control it. And you'll see some of the benefits as shared by the team as we move through the remainder of the slides for today. So I'll turn it back over to Caroline. New team.
I can take over if we want to move over. So now that we know kind of what a captive is, we can kind of look at why we might form one. And these are not limited to these six. There's multiple reasons, but some of them being to fill the coverage gaps that you cannot find in the traditional market for some of those more expansive risks. And then it also allows you to have control of the risk. But also in the claims management process, deciding which claims maybe to pay out or which claims maybe you just want to retain within the captive. You also have access to the reinsure market, allowing you to have more capacity, which allows you to leverage the market in a broader aspect than you could within the traditional market, which could ultimately save money aside from the traditional market. And then tax and legal is a big thing as well, and premium allocation, where you want to allocate your premiums. With a captive, you will be able to decide where you want those allocations to go versus where you may want more or less. And like I said, it is not just stuck to these. There's multiple reasons for deciding to go forward with a captive there. Move to the next slide. So now that we know why, I'll go forward with some types of captives. So we'll start there in the bottom right with a single parent. So with a single parent, it is owned by one company. And it ensures the risks of its parent, subsidiaries, or chosen unaffiliated parties. So with a single parent, you're essentially in the driver's seat with your captive, versus a cell captive over there on the left. You would be more in the passenger seat, because a cell captive, the way it works is the captive is already set up and formed. So you as the company would then rent a cell, hence it being called a cell, from the parent company. And with that cell, it typically comes with lower startup costs than like a standard single parent captive. So the difference between the single parent and a cell being where you want to sit in your captive, if you want to be in the driver's seat controlling everything from start to finish, or you can go with a structure already being built with that cell captive, and you can just implement your captive. And then you can go to the top right where you have a group or an association captive. This is essentially risk pooling. It is owned by multiple companies who are also shareholders within the association. And then they share uncontrolled liabilities and profits within that group. And then it insures or reinsures the risk of the entire group. So with a single parent, you have your own risks. With a group, if there's a loss, you'd pull from the pool. So your profits would be shared amongst the group. And then we'll move on to our last type, which is a risk retention group. And this is kind of more of a specific type of group captive where you are licensed in one state, but you are able to operate in all other 50 states on a registered basis. So you have to register with the other states. Now, the caveat to a risk retention group is you can only write the liability lines of risk. So you would not be able to write the workers' compensation or property in there. So those are kind of some of the different types of captives that we would deal with and that we as consultants deal with on a day-to-day basis. Moving forward, so now we know what a captive is, why you might form a captive, and the different types. What we always explain is a captive is not for everyone. There are some companies who may look at doing a captive, but it may not be feasible for them. They may just have they may not have enough written premium. So a company looking to do a captive has to be financially stable and willing to invest in themselves. They have to be willing to take on risk and trust that they can control that risk, so they're not paying out a ton of claims. And that also goes with the good claims history and that low loss ratio. Typically, a company with 150% loss ratio, it would not be feasible for them to look at a captive versus somebody with maybe a 70% loss ratio where they have excess premium going to the insurer and they could save money by using a captive. It's also a long-term commitment. So a captive is not something that you jump into for a year and then jump out after a year. Rule of thumb that we like to use is a minimum 3 years, and then you can go as long as you'd like, up to 10. But it is a long-term commitment. And then you do have to have good risk management practices. If you are retaining some of that risk on yourself and you decide that you're not allocating the proper risk management techniques and you are having losses, it's not going to be feasible for you to continue down that path. And then if we're going to go into the group captive area, you have to be willing to work with other companies and you have to be okay with that risk sharing in the insurance pool there. But it is something worth noting that a captive is not for everybody. Although if a captive does suit you, it is a great alternative risk financing mechanism.
And I guess jumping over into why consider a captive, as Carter mentioned earlier, it's going to be those 6 C's. So your financial control, cost, flexibility, and that creativity. I like to call that the 7th C. You're going to have potential, as Carter mentioned, short and long-term savings. You're mainly going to see those long-term savings with investment income as well as other risk management choices you decide to make. As mentioned here, there's financial rewards for being better than average. So you're going to go ahead and see those premiums that you tend to see in the traditional market maybe be a little bit lower within your captive because of your good loss and claims history. Having that control, so being able to manage the premium volatility, as I mentioned, from year to year, as well as the ability to reduce costs by controlling those losses year over year, so you're not paying out losses the same kind of loss every year. And then you're going to be rewarded for good loss prevention and claims management as well. So using sometimes that investment income, you can invest in your company, and we can go more into detail about that later. But being able to invest in those risk management practices can be can pay off in the long run. And then just that flexibility, the ability to make your captive the way that you want it, whether it's choosing service providers, coverage options, and seeing what sees fit. And having a captive as well, you can change coverages as you would like, and as well as include and raise those limits as And then just some things to consider. So with a captive, it's still an insurance company. So losses are completely preventable. They're going to happen at some point, but it's just how do you deal with those unexpected large losses? And we tend to see that by building up surplus as well as having that capital in place. You're going to also have some compliance issues from time to time with your captive manager. These should be handled internally with your captive manager to ensure that you're staying in compliance, but of course they do happen from time to time. Meeting and maintaining capital requirements, you'll go ahead and work with your captive manager on that as well. So your captive manager, as Danielle will go into later in the presentation, is going to act as the quarterback. So a lot of the things, once the captive is up and running, you're going to work hand in hand with your captive manager to make sure your company is in compliance. Touching on the considerations again, this is going to be that long-term commitment. One thing that is often overlooked is overcoming the learning curve. As we like to say, this might be our full-time job, but this is just one meeting on the calendar once a week for everyone on your team. So making sure that everyone who is involved in the captive starting process understands and knows what's going on. And that's what your captive consulting and management team will help you do, whether that's overcoming the learning curve with your C-suite or just board of directors in general. We're going to be here to kind of help you through that process. And then touching on domiciles, you've heard that word touched on a lot. So these are going to be where captive legislation is enabled. So it's in about 35 states and 70 domiciles worldwide. So this might be countries such as Luxembourg, Malta, but our top three are going to be Vermont, Cayman, and Bermuda. Vermont is the golden standard. They're the #1 domicile, and they have been for about, I believe, 2 years now. And they're just very innovative in their captive legislation. It started in the 1970s, and it's grown ever since. They have a very well-rounded staff, but so do Bermuda and Cayman as well. So Bermuda and Cayman have a little bit longer of a legislative history, but now that more U.S. states are starting to enact legislation as well as capitalize upon it, we're seeing more U.S. states in this top 10. So we will see South Carolina, Delaware, Hawaii, and they all just continue to keep growing as well. So diving into captive program structures, there's 2 different kinds of structures. So you have a fronted reinsurance structure, and this is where a policy is going to be issued by another carrier, and the carrier reinsures a portion or all of the risk to the captive. Oftentimes we see this when companies are looking to have that fronted paper, whether it's for a certain requirement they need to meet, or just in general for issuing policies. So the captive is going to act as the primary financing entity. And next is the direct issue policy. So the parent company, as well as any other insured, pay premium directly to the captive. Claims are within the captive, claims are within the captive limits and then written by the captive and paid directly to the parent. And we call this also a deductible buyback or deductible reimbursement policy. Oftentimes we see this is one of the more common captives, and this is where you see just kind of that parent and the captive together. Whereas the fronted reinsurance, they might need help with claims administration, all of that, and luckily the fronting insurer helps with all of those back-end processes. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Danielle for the captive evaluation.
Sure. So the first three steps to building a captive is feasibility. Then we'll move into implementation and captive management. I'm going to go to the next slide. Okay, so in the feasibility analysis, we evaluate exposures and future exposures, our coverage needs, and our current program and upcoming changes. Our analysis includes the domicile analysis, ownership structure and actuarial analysis, where the actuary will price your premium based on your data set of losses in your past history. Things to consider here are investments, cost considerations. Again, there's many costs that go along with a captive, so making sure that the premium savings outweigh your costs into a captive, and your program requirements. And then once we've decided with the feasibility study that it makes sense to go into a captive, we start implementation. And then our implementation process is the decision to proceed. We'll select service providers. So upfront, we typically select an audit and tax advisor, an actuary, and a legal team. And that will help get the captive up and running. Our next step will be to develop a business plan. So as consultants, we typically will help the company develop a captive business plan. And then we'll meet with our regulators for whatever domicile that we've decided to choose from and make sure they're comfortable with our business plan and understand what we are going to submit for an application. Once that process is done, we'll move into step 5, which is capitalize and receive approval. So once we get approval from the domicile, the captive or the parent company will capitalize or contribute funds to the captive. And then we'll hold a meeting with everyone involved just to make sure everyone knows their roles in the captive and get the day-to-day management up and running. Okay, Caroline. And once we move into the management and operations, the management team will coordinate with all these different service providers on your right. They're the liaison with the domicile regulators, handle all board meetings. They'll coordinate their policy renewals, and ongoing they do financial statements, underwriting, and corporate administration of the captive. So as you can see, a captive manager touches a lot of different buckets, and they coordinate with all the different types and act as your quarterback for the captive. So it's less of a burden on the parent company. If you want to move along, Caroline. So here's some additional resources that are available to you to use, and we encourage you to look into those.
Yeah, and I just want to say, we gave you a little bit of a bird's eye, 10,000-foot view level. There's a lot of information, as Danielle, Carter, and Caroline shared today, on you could go very deep. And I think this information and these resources, and there's certainly, if you Google or use AI or some of the other details on how you do your research, you'll see there's a plethora of information. But I would encourage you to reach out to the 3 of them, as they'll be able to help guide you on, sometimes there's misinformation as well, right, Danielle? And, being able to at least help guide you in the proper manner. But this touches on and gives you a little bit of that high-level overview. I think moving on, you guys are going to go through, or at least kind of walk through and give some highlights on each of the 3 case studies, correct?
Yeah, so Carter will take it away with the first case study.
So the first case study is Acadia Field. Acadia Field is a state-of-the-art facility with a seating capacity of 100,000 and home to the newest professional football team, the Maine Lobsters. The stadium is responsible annually for the safety and security of 1,700 employees and more than 1.6 million attendees at 600 plus events, including professional sports games, concerts, state high school tournaments, stadium tours, and more. Given its size and importance, Acadia Field faces significant insurance risk related to safety, weather, operations, transportation, technology, and more. Management is deciding whether to explore captive insurance to better manage the facility's risks. Acadia Field is experiencing increased insurance premiums, and limited coverage options from traditional insurance for several of its top risks: entertainment, general liability, liquor and food safety, weather and event cancellation, product and event equipment. And those are just some of the top risks. Again, feel free to come up with some more risks that you would think about. But those are the key ones that the Acadia Field managers per se are worried about right now.
Jumping over to the next topic, it's going to be Seagrass Lodges. So Seagrass Lodges is a group of 15 oceanfront hotels spread along the west coast of the US. They average about 50 rooms with a variety of room options as well as views. Each hotel is home to a unique restaurant and bar. The company has about 900 employees spread across all properties. Like many hotels, Seagrass Lodges is experiencing shifts in the insurance landscape from changes in legislation, as well as resulting actions, including price increases from insurance carriers. As a result, Seagrass Lodges is facing more challenges and uncertainties, necessitating comprehensive risk management solutions. Upper level management is looking into a captive insurance company and would like your help determining coverages and structure. So some premium increases they're experiencing are general liability, liquor liability, property, crime, and workers' comp. But please feel free to get creative, as Carter mentioned.
And this last case study to choose from is very open-ended, and it's you choose your own industry. So you can select anything from healthcare, manufacturing, renewable energy, and within the industry, such as a telehealth provider, a microchip creator, or solar panel distributor. Again, be open, anything goes here. And then research your industry and the emerging risks your type of company faces. Identify coverage gaps like we did in the previous two, your premium increases, and other issues related to current commercial insurance. And then make a recommendation to management on how a captive insurance solution may better risk management option for the company. And the next slide. So this is the essay requirements. You'll choose one of the 3 topics above, and then we'll develop a captive insurance strategy for your case study. And we'd like it to include the following. Recommend an optimal captive structure. Identify the lines of coverage to be placed in the captive. And then just a note here, a well-run captive can provide additional focus on an established risk management plan. Identify additional risk management strategies or changes the companies or the organization might make resulting from the implementation of the captive that will further help the organization. We encourage you to look into investment options for the captive, and even if you'd like to put together your own set of pro forma financial statements, that would be like a mock set of financial statements for the captive as well.
As you can see, we are really proud to sponsor, and with the expertise that you have here and developing some of these case studies, it gives you a little bit of wide range and some freedom to start really digging into all of the particulars around a captive and what organizations consider and start thinking about. So I think we've got a couple here, 3 different exciting opportunities to really show your creativity. And we're looking forward to seeing the submissions and working hand in hand with you.
Great. Well, we'll certainly, we encourage you to ask questions if you have them, if you want to put them in the chat here. Again, visit the CICA World website. We'll have all the most up-to-date information. I do also encourage, if you're going to choose your industry and choose that one, it's a wonderful time to touch base with one of us or your mentors. Another reason why I encourage you to submit the intent to submit thing is if, you know, if something comes up that we want to share or we find another great resource and things like that, we'll make sure that we send that out to you as well. So with that, I'm not seeing anything yet in the chat. Again, I encourage you to reach out to us at any time if you have more questions. I certainly want to thank our the Highland Global Captive Solutions and Captive Insurance Times, our media sponsors. I want to wish all of you good luck, and certainly we all hope to get to meet you in person in Tucson in March, which means you'll be a finalist. And again, it's a great contest. It's a great experience. There's a lot of really unbelievable insurance professionals and folks you'll meet, and it really will potentially jumpstart your career. We have had finalists. Carter's not the only one that didn't necessarily plan to get into captive insurance, but through this journey decided it could be a great career opportunity for him. So again, don't forget to submit your intent to submit forms, and good luck, everyone. Thank you.